Hello everybody, my name is Spooky, and today we're going to be taking a look at a brand new video from KrazeGaming going over the newest Starfield drama and updates. Let's see what's going on.
Anyway, get ready to spend a lot of hours in Starfield, at least 100 plus if you're going.
Ooh, baby. Yeah, 100 hours plus. Which again is like, I mean, I wouldn't say that's like a massive amount of time, especially if you're doing like the main, the side quests, all like the factions and everything. 100 hours really isn't that. I mean, it is, but it isn't. I don't think you should be able to complete a game like Starfield in 100 hours. I'm hoping that it's closer to maybe to like full completion, maybe 200. 100, like when you think about it, I mean, 100 hours is like you're playing 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's going to take you like 2.5 weeks, which I feel like for a game for Starfield, especially for hardcore gamers, we're definitely wanting an experience that takes a little bit longer. So 100 hours, in my opinion, is a little on the short side. I'm hoping it's closer to 200. I think that'll be a perfect amount. Then obviously when mods come out and everything else that comes out, we're going to have a lot more to play with. But I think for the base game itself, especially for a game like Starfield, which has, you know, over 1,000 planets, and they've touted how much the game is just a massive game, it should definitely be closer to that 200 mark. So I'm excited to see how much playtime it really will take. Obviously, this can depend on what difficulty level you do, how experienced of a gamer you are, and just how you approach going through the game. A lot of variables, but I'm really hoping the average game time is close to that 200.
We have this very interesting interview over at the mainstream Bethesda event at Gamescom, during which Pete Hines had this to say.
Which I'm going to say this before he jumps into the Pete Hines thing. Pete Hines made a tweet, if you guys didn't see it a while ago. He mentioned to watch a documentary on Netflix called Unknown Cosmic Time Machine. Me and my girlfriend, we actually watched it a couple nights ago, and it was actually a really good documentary on the James Webb Space Telescope. And a lot of people were getting upset about the telescope drama for some reason. And I just want to say that I don't think the game's based off of it. I don't think it's a prerequisite to watching that before you play the game. It's just giving you a little bit backstory, because I know that the game, there's little references to the James Webb telescope in the game. So I think it was just prepping it for us, but I do recommend it. The documentary was great. It was a fun watch. It got me excited for Starfield, and it got me excited for just like astronomy in general, and just like exploring the new frontier. Like, I've never been a huge like science person, but after watching that documentary, I'm really amped about Starfield and about just like outer space in general. I don't know why, it just got me super excited about it.
And he was like, you know, how far are you in? I was like, I just hit 80 hours. And he's like, so what did you think of the main quest? And I said, oh, I haven't done it. Like, at all. And he goes, what are you doing? Like, I need you to play. I was like, well, I was doing all these other things. I'm trying factions and seeing, you know, what does it feel like? He's like, you have to play the main quest. And then I got so caught up in the main quest that I spent the next 50 hours just doing that. Like, I forgot about all the other things because I got so wrapped up in the story going.
So I think he's mentioning that if I heard this correctly, that the main story for him took him 50 hours. I don't know if he was saying he completed the main story in the 50 hours, but it's looking like the main story would take 50 hours, which would make sense with their predictions when they're saying a little over 100 hours. You know, 50 hours for the main quest, and then an extra 50 to 100 hours for the rest of the quests. Seems like a pretty standard Bethesda game, but again, like I was saying, the scale of this game, at least how they were describing it, I'm really hoping for something bigger to match the game's scale. Really does blow players out of the water.
Or if you want to pay attention to every single detail, you might fall anywhere between that 35 to about 50 hours of playtime. I would imagine that most players will fall in that roughly 40 hours that Todd Howard also mentioned back in 2022 during IGN's Summer of Gaming.
I guess that would make sense, especially with I mean, I know Skyrim's main quest, we can probably, especially at this point, if you're familiar, if you've played it through before, you can probably finish the main quest in like, I want to say like 20 hours. For the most part, the storyline doesn't take that long. So I guess it being 40 hours is definitely longer than most Bethesda storylines that we've played through.
It really gets me excited. I really enjoy games in which I can stay for 100+ hours and still have fun in it.
Agreed.
If you look at the majority of the AAA releases in the past year, like,
I want to mention this real quick. It's one of the great things about playing a game that you get to stay in for a really long time. despite it just being fun, you know, bringing people back to play, there's a special relationship you get with a game, or like honestly anything, whether it's a movie or a book or any kind of medium that you constantly come back to. You start to develop a relationship with it in a way that you start to get to be able to dive deeper into what the game is and how it really feels. Because I feel like a lot of gamers, especially I'm guilty of this nowadays, is I feel like I scratch the surface on games that I play. You know, I play it and I enjoy it, and then I leave it. And I never really come back to it. It's always just play it and leave, play it and leave. And there's only a few games where I can really say that I've gotten to really get deep into the game and create like this new experience, new connection with the game, almost to the point where, you know, people get tattoos of them. People, you know, 20 years after they play it, they say how much this game meant to them, how much it changed their life, how much of an experience it was. And that's kind of what we're looking for. It's a game that we can, that almost draws us in. It doesn't let us scratch the surface of it. It doesn't let us just play it and move on. It demands us to get deep into the game. It pulls us into the game to get down into the trenches, and then we can emerge from it with this brand new experience and say, wow, that was truly like life-changing what I just experienced. And that's what I'm hoping for Starfield. Because I know games like Oblivion, Skyrim, those both did those for me. They drew me down real deep. Fallout did a little bit. I wasn't a huge fan of the Fallout games as much as I was the Elder Scrolls games, but I'm really hoping Starfield can emulate that for me, but for other players as well. That experience of just getting deep into a game so you can really make a connection with a story, with a character, with a world. That's kind of what we're looking for.
Interesting is that he mentions the game doesn't really get going until you finish the main quest, which to me it sounds like he's implying there are a lot of unique gameplay features that only open up until much later. And one of
I'm gonna say that's kind of why I tend to avoid main quests, because I usually love, especially open world games, the side quests I enjoy so much more than the main quest. The main quest is cool and everything, and usually it's very cinematically pleasing and everything, and it's a cool story and everything. But you don't really like the stories, especially for Bethesda games, are very linear, right? It's the main story is very linear, and when you go off and do side quests, it really is up to you on how you make your character. That's why especially in my second playthrough, I typically skip the main quest because I'm like, okay, I want to create a new character. I want to do a different line of this and this and this, and I'm really hoping that, especially with the main quest, that it has several different endings. It has different variations on things you can do, on how you approach the main quest is what I'm hoping for. Because I know in games like Skyrim, Fallout, they were I was very on how I could go through the main storyline as it went through. Now obviously they had separate endings, but it's like, I don't really want to play the same game all the way through and then just have a different ending at the end. I want to have different experiences, different reactions to things, different side things that we end up going off on. And from what I've heard, Starfield does have that. And they really focused on that is the main quest as well as side quest factions and such. And I'm really looking forward to that immersive world. Something like Cyberpunk really could have done, which is what we were expecting, was this really immersive gameplay to where everything's tied together and it really does change your character as you play the game. It's what we're hoping for.
So after an atmospheric introductory mission, he explains which sets off the game's main quest to investigate mysterious artifacts across the galaxy. You get your first spaceship, the Frontier, and meet your first companion, the robot VASCO, who calls me Captain Sam. This is, of course, as he mentions, he named his character Sam, and just like in Fallout 4, yeah, VASCO can actually say a large number of names, and if you do create a character with one of those names, it will be mentioned. I could go anywhere, but I head for the sprawling city of New Atlantis.
I'm curious to see how far VASCO will go to call you by your name. Does it have like specific blacklisted words? Is it only like typical names that are going to be allowed in there, or can you come up with something really fun like Captain Poopy Pants or something? Something a little bit more mature than that, but it would be funny to see how far VASCO can go with calling you by your name. Obviously, I know for a fact they're going to be blacklisting certain words for VASCO to be able to say, but how far can we go with the character naming? Is it only restricted to typical names that you would see in the world?
As the Frontier blasts off into orbit for the first time, its afterburners pop like an intergalactic jaguar. And I mean, yeah, if you watched any gameplay leaks or just looked at the gameplay, they really nailed that audio and feedback of pretty much everything, especially interplanetary flight. New Atlantis is the densest city the studio has ever created, with bustling streets, shiny skyscrapers, and distinct areas both above and below ground. I see barely any of it. Real city isn't just designed and built, it evolves over time. And it's in the upper district.
I would love to see some more of this too. Like a city that changes over time. Probably the first game I played that really showcased this as an open world, I guess, was Hogwarts Legacy. In the fact that the areas of the map change depending on the season. Like sometimes they would have Christmas decorations up, sometimes they'd have, you know, Halloween decorations. It could be summer, spring, or whatever. I think it's the first open world game where I saw that happen, where they went into that much detail with changing the seasons. I'm really hoping we see that in Starfield, but I wouldn't be surprised if we did not, mainly because each of the planets technically have their own seasons. They have their own day-night cycles. At least if they're keeping it consistent, they could just say, you know what, all the planets have the same day-night cycles just to keep it easy. And then with that, you could just keep the same seasons. But I'm feeling like they're probably just not going to do seasons that much. They might change a little bit, just like you might have a summer season, a winter season, a spring season kind of thing where it changes for each planet a little bit. But they're not going to be doing like holidays. They're not going to be doing like, you know, I mean, how often it happens. I feel like, especially with a game that has so over 1,000 planets, it's going to be tough to do that in regards to keeping all those planets consistent with each other. So
district of this city that we meet Constellation, the game's Victorian-esque space explorer organization, and the main propellers of the central story. Outside of their base, the Lodge, essentially an early 1920s era Soho house, all chintz and log fires, there's a whole raft of opportunities. I get distracted by a museum, he explains, where I catch up on 3 centuries of human history, a devastating colony war, the fate of Earth, and something that I don't want to like mention in this video, but it is.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick, because the timeline of what Starfield is, they've dropped that whole thing on their website. And it does span two wars. There's 2 wars that it mentions in there, and how humanity split up into different factions, different people arose out of it, all the way back to when humans first left the planet and established a colony on Mars. It's really setting the stage for a lot of lore. And I'm expecting a large plethora of books or just data cards or something that have stories on this. If you guys are lore lovers, I feel like Starfield's going to be one of the biggest lore games out there. Now, I don't know if it's going to be as good as, you know, what we'd say in my opinion, Elder Scrolls. Their lore is so rich, but it's pretty easy to do that in a fantasy game. Starfield, on the other hand, I think it's going to have a lot of it, whether or not it's going to be as interesting. But I think it's set the stage for a game that really can create a massive conflict. Like, obviously on the scale of like Star Wars, you know, Star Wars has such a intricate lore system with so many characters connected to each other, because you can have different planets, different species, different solar system, whatever, we're all across the galaxy, cosmos, wherever you're traveling to. I'm excited about it, dude. I'm a nerd. I don't know if you guys are nerds about that when you play these kind of games, but I'll sit there and I'll read the book, and I'll go online, I'll watch videos on like lore for these different games, so I can really get myself into the environment. So when I'm walking around, I'm like, oh, that's from that, or oh, that person just said something that's related to what I learned from earlier. And it really does like bring you down into that world and say, hey, like, you're part of this. I don't know. Very excited about it.
Is nonetheless fascinating. Within 45 minutes, I have 12 new quests leading me off-world. One has me smuggling contraband from the mining colony of Sidonia on Mars to gain the trust of the deadly Crimson Fleet. And it seems that Bethesda is particularly excited about the smuggling possibility. Smuggling is an entire subsection of the game. There's even a quest line involving smuggling from the looks of it, and yeah, it's just something that you're probably going to want to eventually embark on to maybe get some interesting rewards out of it. I personally know that I will dedicate a run just to full on piracy, and smuggling just sounds really interesting.
When I first heard of Starfield, the first character I came up with was a smuggler. Was a smuggler slash outlaw. And I think we'll probably still be doing that when the game launches. I think it's almost like natural to gravitate towards that for a space game. Is that smuggling aspect of it. It's like the kind of friendly, but you still want to be able to like break the laws a little bit. That's what I'm excited about. So apparently, if they're saying that there's an entire side gameplay section of smuggling, and like that's what you do is smuggling, getting objects from here to that planet and getting through the security systems, or having to like defeat people to get through. I think it's going to be a really fun way to especially level up your ship, get a lot of money, and I don't know how money's going to interact with the game to what degree, but I think it's gonna be fun.
To hunt space pirates in low gravity and the frozen plateaus of Europa. As I boost to huge heights using my rocket backpack, the combat has the responsive fanaticism of something like Destiny rather than Fallout. And yeah, so far it seems that combat has never looked better in a Bethesda game than in Starfield. That already sounds overwhelming from the first starting hours, and it really looks like you can take your playthrough in whichever direction you want. That is why the developers came in with a huge advice for players starting fresh on September 1st or September 6th, depending which edition you buy. In fact, Pete Hines of Bethesda specifically mentions opportunities called activities that players can seek out, and he heavily encourages you to go ahead and do the side content before moving on to the mission. We encourage you to play this like any Bethesda game. Do what you want, go where you want, test the game, be the kind of person you want.
And this is what we're talking about. They've been talking about this from the beginning, and I hear a lot of criticisms about Starfield on how, oh, it's just another space sim. Oh, it's just like No Man's Sky. Like they said this before they started like really pushing marketing for this. They said this in the beginning. They said this is a Bethesda game. Like first and foremost, a Bethesda game in space. Like when they said it, they said think Skyrim in space. And even Pete Hines himself said he thinks of it more as Oblivion, closer to Oblivion than Skyrim. And he said a few people will understand that, and especially if you played both of them, you'll know the difference between Oblivion games and Skyrim games. And I will say I like Oblivion more than Skyrim, so this got me even more excited about that. But that's what it is. We know people when they're saying it's a space sim, like you're just going to be doing space chores and stuff. Like no. At least from how they've propped this up and how they've explained it. Now, obviously, it could be different on launch, but they've explained it as this is a Bethesda game. This is just a normal any other Bethesda game that you'll play. You know, it's got rich story, it's got rich characters, good plot lines, good side quests, factions, etc. It just happens to be in space, and I think there's a stigma around space games right now because we've had so many that really flopped at launch, and really are boring. So I get the criticism, but if people have not played Bethesda games before or are not familiar that this is a Bethesda game and they're just seeing it as Starfield, just the new space game, Bethesda's track record really does focus on creating rich worlds. So that's why I'm very excited about this one.
Want to be in this world and see what happens. Now, of course, with such a big release, it's unavoidable to have some controversy surrounding it. Literally every single game I've covered until now, if it was a big, huge release, it always had some kind of controversy. From Spider-Man back in 2018, even Tears of the Kingdom, there was some kind of controversy at every single step of the way, and obviously Bethesda isn't without one. Now, this whole controversy situation came from a leak a few days ago where somebody got the game early and they mentioned how planets aren't fully explorable, and in fact there are invisible barriers and pop-up that will appear once you exceed the limits of the landing spot.
Yeah, and if you guys have not seen this yet, the mention of the leak when they said this would, in my opinion, be very sad, because they literally said, somebody asked the question on Twitter and they literally responded. I think it was Pete Hines that responded to this, and they asked, am I going to be able to walk all the way around the planet, like from one point to the other? Am I going to be able to circumnavigate this planet? And he said straight up, he said, yep. He said, yep, you're going to be able to explore. He said, walk on or walk, you know. So they confirmed that you can walk all the way around the planet. I'm really hoping that this leak is false, because I would hate to go out of the gate with them lying. about what you can do. But that would be quite disheartening. So we'll find out.
Notice that task was only done in the tutorial area, from my understanding. However, since then there has been official confirmation that it extends to the full game. So Tom Henderson, the owner of Insider Gaming news outlet and who's apparently been playing the game, did manage to confirm some interesting things over on Twitter. Not all of them may be so uplifting. So according to him, planets have a different number of landing spots with terrain limits. One planet might have 3 landing spots, he explains, whilst another might have 5. These are your main landing spots with points of interest, and then you have another number of landing spot allocations where you can land anywhere. Once that limit is reached, so 3 to 5 landing spots, you just land somewhere else and it basically rewrites/deletes your oldest spot. And also you cannot run all the way around the planet or whatever, and cannot run to another landing spot from the looks of it. It must be maybe a means to preserve console or computer performance.
So this is that's wow. Wow, that is what I was scared of, because they literally said you'd be able to walk all the way around the planet. I guess they either didn't understand the question or were deciding to phrase it in a way that didn't look bad, is all I can think. But if that's true, that in my opinion, that was a lie. Like that means they just lied to us. Like when he asked, can I just keep walking and go around a planet? And they said, yep, you can. And now they're saying, well, it's region locked. So you can walk you can cover the whole planet, but you can't walk to like different landing sites. Like once you've explored one site, you got to travel to the next landing site, and then you can explore that area. That's disappointing. I understand why it's tough, but it's also disappointing because the way they said it made it seem like you really could just start walking and walk all the way around the planet.
But the basic gist of it is that you can land anywhere on a planet, but terrain is going to be limited. Now, I will keep it 100% real with you, and whilst it is sad that we don't get a full solar system simulation, it's probably not going to impact your overall enjoyment that much, if at all. And I say that to you as a No Man's Sky enthusiast who's been playing for over 7 years now, and not once have I ever attempted to run on a planet for more than a few minutes straight. The possibility fully exists.
Yeah, but it would be cool to know that you could, you know?
To like just jog around the planet, but I don't know a single major No Man's Sky content creator who ever even attempted that. To be honest, my biggest gripe with the game, if I were to even mention it, is that there's no seamless planetary takeoff and landing, which I find to be much more important. I mean, that feeling of breaking out of planet's atmosphere when you play No Man's Sky, for example, is really something. But really, for the overwhelming majority of players, this is going to not be an issue. Now, one other thing that has been talked about was the supposedly jittery footage of some of the gameplay shots. Now, according to Digital Foundry, which did get special permission to talk about this from Bethesda, yeah, the game should be much more smoother, at least compared to the gameplay footage we've seen up until now, and which
again, a little sus from my angle, especially when you're doing a big release of a game. You definitely check the trailers, because right, we've all seen the trailers and the Starfield Direct and everything. We all saw it. We all saw the jitteriness. We all saw. Are you telling me that it made it all the way through everybody before the Direct, and they all said, "Damn, yeah, that looks jittery. Oh, unfortunate. Let's go give this presentation." From somebody that works in editing and getting stuff presented properly, there is no shot that I would get ready to showcase this $1 million game to everybody, to drive all these pre-sales, see that the footage is jittery and not as smooth as it is in game, and be like, yeah, no, we're good, just show it. Like, there's no shot. Like, I would be like, no, no, we're gonna fix this, because then everyone's gonna be like, this game looks terrible, and then we're gonna lose sales. I think that they knew this beforehand. I think the game wasn't running well enough when they were doing the Starfield Direct. They could not get it to run properly, and they had to push something out. So they got it to look as best as they could. Now, from what I'm hearing about these early review copies is that it is smooth. I think they fixed that later on, but I think them not knowing it or them noticing it after the fact is a bunch of bullshit, dude.
From the starting missions that they were able to play according to them. So it seems that was just a rendering issue more so than a gameplay issue. Another interesting prospect, despite being an Xbox exclusive, well, if you want to call it that, it's also available on PC, it's just not coming to the PS5, but there might be a way in the end to play Starfield on the PlayStation ecosystem, and that's thanks in part to the recent announcement of the PlayStation handheld device that Sony is selling for about $200. Never gonna buy that, by the way, but it could open up the possibility to just stream the game on the device if you do manage to modify its OS.
Xbox isn't going to be happy about that.
So its operating system, and that's because it's running on a modified version of Android, which could possibly be hacked in a way to play games from other consoles, especially when it comes to streaming services. And we do know that the game is also going to be on Game Pass day one. And since it's been recently confirmed that the PlayStation Portal isn't just restricted to the PS5, but it can also stream Xbox games, it could in theory let you play it that way. Now, I'm not sure why you would do that when we have the Steam Deck or many of the other very powerful handhelds that
much easier, much easier.
Few months or are about to appear. But I mean, it's totally an option, and if you want to like really throw a corporate FU, you can totally do so and break that exclusive barrier, that exclusive console barrier, at least partially. Anyway, that's it with the recent news.
I think it's funny that people are getting so upset about Starfield being exclusive to Microsoft. When before, I don't know if you guys know this, Sony was trying, they were in talks and had deals on the table for Starfield to be a PS5 exclusive release. That was until Microsoft laid down the fat stacks and said, how about instead of that, we'll buy you guys. And then we can just release Starfield as an exclusive on Xbox and PC. I thought that's such a badass move, dude. Just come in there and just buy out a whole company because you want to get exclusive release. I don't know. I thought it was great. I think it's much respect to Microsoft, dude. That's such a big play. Anyways, that's our reaction, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're excited for Starfield, let me know below. We are going to be streaming it live over on my Twitch at twitch.tv/TSG_spooky. You can also see all my stuff here on YouTube as well, so make sure you subscribe, like, and yeah, I'm excited. Hopefully you guys are excited. I'm ready to get in there with you, get in the trenches of Starfield. Yeah, I got high hopes for it, so I'm setting the bar pretty high because they've set it high for themselves, and we'll see what we got. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Again, my name's Spooky, and I will see you later. Peace.